Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to this week's video. In this week's video, I'm a little bit pushed for time, so I do apologise. This is a bit of a quicker one, but I'd rather give you something than not. So basically, this is just an addition to last week's video with the headshot. Essentially, I just want to add a little bit extra to that. So essentially, if you get shot in the chest, luckily the ALS project comes with an injured animation where the character holds his chest, his torso, to signify that he's injured. Now, if I shoot somebody in the foot, it doesn't really contribute to that, but if I shoot him in the chest, you can see that he changes then to sort of an injured stance, and then shortly after it returns back to its default stance. So if I'm having a fight with this guy and I get him in the arm, he acts as if he's injured, and then after a short time he resets back into his original pose. Okay, so let's get started. So with the advanced locomotion system open, you just want to navigate to the blueprints folder and then character logic and open up the ALS Injured, and that's the blueprint that's responsible for all of these characters. So if we create it in every one of the characters in the game will respond the same. So we'll open that up. Now, if you followed along with the headshot tutorial, you'll already have this event point damage, which basically just finds out which bone was hit. And if it was true, if it's true that it's hit in the head, it'll spawn this visual effects or blood splatter, hide the head, get the character to ragdoll and remove any weapons or items that he may have been holding. And we're really going to use this as a base to work from. Now, what you can do is we're going to need to get an input when we take damage, and we need to sort of decide whether we should be injured or not. Now, it's absolutely fine if you want to use a sequence node here and just split off this event, but alternatively what you can also do is get an event any damage. We're not actually going to take the damage number too seriously here, but it'll just give us a good indication of what we should do. But essentially these two will just fire at the same time. And this is just another good execution point to work from, rather than having a sequence work through lots of different things. Anyway, that being said, what we want to do is we want to find out whether we should enter an injured state or not. Now, for me, what I'm thinking is, obviously, if I'm shot in the leg or the foot, I don't really want to go into an injured state because he appears to hold his chest area. So what I'm thinking is if we're shot in maybe the spine or above, that's really the area that we want to say, right, let's consider him injured, and if we're shot in the legs, just take damage as normal. So with that being said, I'm going to use the spine or one bone name as a reference to say if I get hit above this bone, we're injured. So while you're here, sorry, because I quickly went into this, I'll show you how I get here. In the anim character, if you select your mesh and then click on this skeletal mesh, and there is a sort of search icon, click on that, it will bring you to this anim man. You can open that up and click on skeleton and you'll be brought to this window here. Then to see the skeleton, you can go to character, bones and all hierarchy, and it will show you everything. By default it's on selected, which won't show you everything, so you can just go to, oh, where's it gone? Here we go, all. So with Spinal 1 selected, I'm just going to copy that name, just so I don't have to type it in just a few minutes. I'm going to go back to the Animan blueprint. Now there's a pretty neat node called is this born a child of, which is pretty cool. So what we can do is born child of, and that's going to pull in my mesh by default, just to make sure that it is your mesh character 0, because if it picks one of the other meshes then it's probably not going to work. And with that selected, let's just move that over a little bit. Now what this node does is it checks to see if this born name is sort of a child of this parent bone, which we can paste in our spinal one here. And if the bone name is a child or is equal to the parent bone, it'll return true. Now, typically these bones, it depends on how the skeleton's made that you're working with, but what happens is the pelvis is a part of the root bone, and the bones have kind of been made upwards. So it goes from root, which is at the bottom, to pelvis, to spine, and then the thighs come down. So essentially from spinal 1 upwards like this, and then outwards to the fingers, they're all children of spinal 1. And then similarly, the thigh, left and right, are sort of the parent bones for the rest of the legs. So we're going to go from spinal 1 upwards. So the head and neck are children of spinal 1 because it goes upwards, and that'd return true. So if that was true, let's do a branch. So if when we get hit in a bone, which is a child of the spine, is true, I'd say we should be considered injured. Now, there may be one other scenario, whereas if the damage is greater than or equal to 100, which in my case, my health would be 100. If this happens to be true, I'm just going to do another branch. Plug that in. If this happens to be true, what I'm going to say is I've actually died. So there's no point becoming injured because I'm dead. Now, for me, just to make it simple, what I'm going to do for die or dead is I'm just going to tap into this previous headshot code, and I'm just going to go straight to a ragdoll and remove the weapon from the character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, custom event. I'm just going to put die. You're probably better off giving this a better name, but for the sake of this, just die. I'm going to connect that into there. So every time we fire die, I'm going to ragdoll my character and remove his equipped weapon. So what I can do now is say, if my damage is greater than or equal to 100, I've died. I'm going to fire die. Just like that. If it's not, and it's not a headshot, I should be injured. So if this is true, what we need to do is we need to set our overlay state to injured. Now, we're going to come back to this, but we really need to set this injured state in a temporary state folder, file, should I say, because we're going to need to change back to what we were. So if we was in sort of like the pistol state or a torch state or binoculars, we need to be able to revert back to that, or at least make a reference of what we were, so we have the ability to switch back to it. Because at the moment, I've now changed our state to injured, and if I try reversing that, I don't really have any data to reverse it with, so we'll need to make a reference to that. But just for the time being, what we'll do is we'll set this to injured, and we'll just see what happens. So if we hit compile now and play, and what we'll do is we'll just hit Q, go down to a rifle, and we'll come over here and we'll shoot somebody in the leg, and nothing happens. But I shoot this guy in the chest, and now he turns into an injured state. Now, this character is going to stay like that for the rest of his life, so we need to sort of do something to reverse that if you want to, or you can continue to damage him and kill him eventually. Now, obviously, we're not going to talk about sort of accumulative damage, so you'll have to set up a health system, and if the health drops below 100, you can call this die function. But I'll leave that bit up to you. But essentially, you can just bolt that into this. It shouldn't be much of a problem. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a couple of variables. So I'm just going to call this temp state holder. So let's change this to overlay state, and you should find an enum ALS overlay state. Pick that, and then what we're going to do is we want to drag this out, and we want to set. If it's true, we want to set, and we want to set it to our get overlay state. So what this is going to do is just before we override it to our injured state, we're just going to take we're going to take that data in and just keep hold of it, just so then we have the ability to switch back. So that's fine. And then what we want to do is, as we move on a little bit, what you'll see is characters that are holding sort of objects, so like this weapon, when they become injured, you can see that that gun's just kind of like sat on his wrist because it's never been told to despawn, or sort of like if you've got like a holster or maybe a place on the back, you'd need to sort of like default it to that area. So you might want to say, if you've got like a gun holder on the character's leg, you might want to reset it back into that. But essentially what we want to do is we want to take the held object, which for the weapon would be a skeletal mesh, and we want to say, let's set this. Set the skeletal mesh to blank, just leave it empty, and we don't want to reinitialize the pause either. So that'll remove the mesh from the character. Hit player, select a pistol, I guess any gun would work. We'll go find that guy. We're going to shoot him in the chest. Oh, I accidentally killed him. Where's the other dude? Oh, he's got a static mesh. Let's just go back and try it again. I didn't mean to shoot him in the head. I'm just a bad aim. So I'll come over here, shoot him in the chest. He's injured, and you can see now that the weapon has disappeared. So again, similarly to this overlay state, we've now lost what mesh he was currently equipping. So we need to take in sort of like a placeholder for that, for when we want to reset. So again, let's just create a quick variable. We'll say temp skelly mesh mesh holder, and this one's obviously going to be a skeletal mesh, and that's going to be a skeletal mesh object reference. Pick that up, and what we want to do is I'm just going to move this over. Now I've got such an itchy nose for some reason. When testing this, I put in some is valid nodes to say if this mesh is valid, so do I have something equipped, do this. But I actually noticed that the is valid nodes just for some reason didn't work. The skeletal mesh always came back valid whether it was empty or not, which for me is a little bit silly. But I typically feel like it's best practice to put it in. You know, add an it is valid, but I guess it would return valid anyway. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this temporary skeletal mesh. I'm going to set it. Let's put that in. We're going to set it to the current skeletal mesh. Oh, no, we're not. Let's drag that out. And we're going to say get skeletal mesh. So this skeletal mesh is actually a component, but we need to get the mesh which is attached, which is this one. So drag your skeletal mesh out and get the mesh that's actually attached. We're going to move this over here like that, just to make it look a bit neater. So we've got a reference to our mesh, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set our current mesh to blank. But before we do that, what we may as well do is let's just set our static mesh placeholder as well, which we've not actually made, but we can just promote this to a variable, and then we'll call it temp static mesh holder. Very nice long name on that one, and plug that into that. So once we've got these sort of references, now we can set our skeletal mesh and our static mesh to blank. So plug that in, get our static mesh, and we'll set static mesh, leave that blank. So now when we set our injured state, we shouldn't have any weapons equipped at all, no matter who we hit. So let's go and do that. Let's go not headshot people. So we'll shoot this guy in the arm. or in the chest, he becomes injured and his box disappears. Shoot this guy, his gun disappears, and we'll shoot this guy in the back and his torch disappears. So all the people with static meshes and sort of skeletal meshes, they all disappear. But now let's think about, they're not going to be injured forever. If you imagine like Call of Duty, after a couple of seconds or a minute or so, your health regenerates back to a point where you're not injured. So let's just add a quick to-do comment in there. We'll just put health regeneration. Regen. Yeah. So I'm not going to build this out, but you could easily do that. Just add health over time using a timer, something like that. But let's say health regeneration happens, but from my point of view, I'm just going to do a delay. And I'm going to use a retriggerable. If you've never used a retriggerable delay, essentially, if you fire this delay and then you fire it again before the delay has gone through its time, it'll just reset. That's a benefit because if you use a regular delay and you set it to 5 seconds, if you get shot again, it doesn't matter. Like, from the original shot that you got, once that time's run out, you'll not be injured again. So if you keep getting shot, you won't appear injured. So just use a retriggerable delay. The mile's better. I'll just say 5 seconds. Once that's done, what we can do is we can start reversing this this state now. So what we can do is we can set these meshes. I'm just going to press Control and select all of these nodes. Press Control D, and well, let's fly back over here. We're now just going to reset all these. I'm just going to give us a bit more space to breathe. So I'll plug that into there, and then what we're going to do is move that over, and we're going to say get our temporary skeletal mesh, and that's going to be that. Make this look a bit neater. Now, if we had a temporary skeletal mesh, I don't really want to hold on to that mesh forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that temp. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to set it, but I'm just going to leave it blank. And I'm essentially just erasing the temporary mesh that I'd hold. And then same again with this one. I'm just going to get that static mesh, get, plug that into there, make that look a little bit neater. But I'm also going to get the static mesh here. Whoa, where did I go? I'm good. What's happening there? Okay, doesn't seem to like that. Let's just duplicate that there. Oh no, I don't want to duplicate it. Let me hold Control. No, it's not that. Is it Shift? Nope. Alt. There we go. If you hold Alt, I don't know what's going on there. That's a bit weird. Yeah, that's bizarre. That's obviously a bug. So I'm going to set that and leave it as blank. So essentially I've reset what mesh is in there. Let's move that down. And I don't like that actually, so I'm just going to put that there. Move that over. So what we're doing is, I think this is pretty much it, to be honest. So we're taking some damage. We're seeing if we should die or if we should become injured. If we've been hit in the spine or above, we should be injured. We're going to set a temporary state for our injury. And then after a little bit, we're going to put the mesh back in our hand. And you know what? I forgot to reset the state. So let's just give us a bit more space. And let's get this temporary state placeholder, which obviously I can't, yeah. Get that. We're going to set... Please don't crash. Okay, so something's clearly wrong with my screen. So I can see it on the recording, but on my actual screen it's blank. So that's really weird. I'm going to use the screen I can see on the recording software to sort of do this. This is a weird bug. That's thrown me a little bit. So set overlay state. Overlay. I can't really see here because I'm looking at like a little 2-inch preview. State. There we go. And then that's the one you want. Now I can see the node. That's cool. And then we want to set that back to whatever our temporary one was. Plug that in. Leave that there. And then obviously we want to set this back to... Actually, I guess you could leave this, because that's just data at this point, and there isn't really a none to set it back to. I tell you what, that's really freaked me out at why Unreal's decided to sort of be invisible. Then that was really weird. So yeah, we're gonna set back to our original state and set our meshes. So I think that should be pretty much it. Let's hit play. Let's go to rifle. Let's run over here and let's hit this guy. Let's shoot him in the chest. He becomes injured, and then after 5 seconds, he returns back to his original state. Now, obviously, the original state bit's completely optional. You can have the character stay in an injured state. How that injured state looks is up to you. I guess really I just wanted to show that you can sort of like pinpoint injuries in certain areas. So if you could set the same thing up where if anything from the shoulder onwards is hit, it drops the weapon. I know in sort of like a fast-paced FPS game that'd be really annoying, but if you're doing sort of like a solo story mode, that might be a pretty neat thing. If your character's hit in the arm, it might be realistic to be injured, drop your weapon sort of thing. But yeah, I'll leave that with you. So now we've got headshots, if I can hit them, headshots, injured people, and our states reset. So this video wasn't much, but I hope for some of you that it will be helpful. If it was, please consider giving me a like. If you like watching videos like this, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So far, we're doing pretty well. I hope we can hit it. I'll be really happy if we can. Anyway, if you want to leave a comment down below, that's cool too. I reply to almost every message. If you want to have a chat about anything, if you want to request anything, either pop it down in the comments or you can join the Discord. That's in the links below. And that's pretty much it from me. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video.